Well, hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee here. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by, as every night, Omni True Value Hardware, Long Island's largest rock salt provider. Rock salt, straight bag, straight salt bag, geomelt, biomelt, mulch, recycling, and everything you need to get through the winter months that are coming up when the winter storms finally arrive. So, no matter what size your fleet or if you're just an individual, Omni True Value Hardware will meet your needs, serving the Long Island and the New York City metro area. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, West Babylon, just north of the Southern State Parkway. 631-756-1125, or just go to the website, omnitruevalue.com. So, sorry for the delay. Waiting for Bill Goodman to arrive. He is not here yet, so I'm not sure whether it's a delay or if there's something going on and he's not not going to show. I don't know. But in the meantime, you and I have some things that we can do and things that we can talk about. Uh, Joe, Hurricane Iota or whichever.
Whatever.
Uh, just as the pressure went in, it was at around 920 millibars. It really didn't change very much from hitting peak intensity. Hurricane Center nudged the winds down just a little bit from a Category 5 to a strong Category 4 on landfall. I don't know that it really makes a huge difference because this area has gotten flattened basically by two major hurricanes in 2 weeks. The landfall was about 15 miles from where Eta made landfall. That's really astounding when you
It
think
is.
about it.
It is. It's like there was a magnet, and that it drew in both of those storms within a matter of only about a week or so. And I'm looking on the screen right now, Joe, at this dramatic video. I really can't. I don't know why. I mean, I read the discussion why they're not going to continue with this as it moves out into the over the Pacific Ocean. They said that the um, guidance models were not indicating any kind of strengthening of the system. I tell you what, this thing looks pretty well put together, even as it's making the cross through Central America. And so
Yeah.
I'm wondering why they don't. I mean, I've known many a storm that in the past where they've continued to track. It seems to me like difficult to believe that this thing is going to be entirely gone once it makes its way out over the Pacific Ocean again, and
Well,
they're
the
not.
models the models identify a remnant low. It is there is a remnant low there, but it quickly disappears. So I'm not sure what they didn't really get into any of the meteorological reasons as to why it wouldn't regenerate. I mean, they did say that where it is now, as it crosses the border from Honduras to El Salvador, that the terrain there is exceptionally high, and that they expected that the surface low would just get ripped completely apart by it, and maybe that's what's going to happen. But there certainly looks like there's an intact mid-level circulation with this as it moves westward.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe they just don't want to confuse the issue by continuing with the Greek letter as it moves into the Pacific Ocean, which would be a first for them.
Well,
I,
that's true,
yeah,
because I think the new thing, they used to change the name when it jumped on the other side, but I think now the rule is that they keep it the same.
right, right. And I what else can you say about a Category 5 storm in mid November? I mean, it's I'm looking at the loop, and I'm amazed at the how clear the eye was and the outflow, and you would think every bit that this was a storm that was developing or taking shape or moving in on Central America in late August or September, not mid November. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it truly is. And with the activity in that part of the Caribbean, it just speaks to the whole overall upper air pattern that's around, and that is the one takeaway from this is if you want the weather to change in the eastern part of the United States, you're going to have to get a breakdown of this pattern that keeps producing tropical systems in the Caribbean, because that supports a ridge in the Gulf of Mexico and off the southeast coast of the United States. So with the outflow from these storms basically feeding into the ridge and strengthening it even more, it's hard to imagine how you're going to get the upper high to break down if we keep making tropical storms and hurricanes in the Caribbean. So it's got to until conditions become unfavorable there, until pressures are higher than normal. Uh, the weather pattern that we're sitting in is going to have a really tough time getting dislodged.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this high that is building in now, as I speak, looks like it's going to take up residence along the mid-Atlantic coast for the middle and latter part of the week and help to push temperatures back up again as we move toward the end of the week into the upcoming weekend.
All right, so let's jump around here. We'll go to the current satellite view of the U.S. And by the way, just for those of you who are late arrivals, uh, Bill Goodman is supposed to be here. He is running late, I guess. I haven't heard from him, so um, fingers crossed that he shows up. Otherwise, I'm going to be really embarrassed. So
Well, you're not the one who needs to be embarrassed, Joe. I mean, if a guest has been invited and accepts the invitation, if that guest doesn't show up, he's the one who's going to be embarrassed, I guess.
yeah, well, we'll find out because if he shows up late, we'll have to scold him.
Gloria Vanderbilt is not alive anymore. We would ask her, or
What, to be
Ann
on the
Landers,
show?
or Ann Landers. No, I'm just asking for advice. What is the etiquette here? I mean,
Well,
who?
where's Miss Manners when you need her?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Still pretty quiet, Joe, across the U.S. We got cold this afternoon when that cold front went through. I don't. Did you see any snow up your way? Because I know not too far from you to the north, up in Dutchess County, there was some snow and sleet, some bursts up that way.
We didn't see any, and in fact, I made a mention of it to my wife Renata. I said, I'm surprised. I would have thought we would have, the atmosphere would have cooled down or gotten cold enough to support at least some wet flakes. But all we saw today was just raindrops. So I guess the boundary between rain and wet snow was just off to my north.
Yeah, I got a couple of showers here that went through in the afternoon, and you could see on the Canadian satellite loop the activity is still being driven by that big upper low that has now moved from eastern Canada uh, east of, and then it moved northwestward to the east of Labrador, and now is way up into northern Canada. So, as it gets further north, its influence in the pattern in the east is going to lessen. The trough is going to be lifting out, and we will see things start to warm up beginning, I think, on Thursday. We should see a nice bounce off the morning lows Thursday. The next 2 nights look very cold here. Meanwhile, there's a pretty strong storm in the Pacific Northwest with low pressure moving into southwest Canada, very well defined there on the satellite. Looks like waves of rain coming in, which we'll check on the radar in a moment. But that's where all the activity is for the time being, because the rest of the country is fast asleep with quiet mid fall weather.
It is, and it's going to continue. I love, at this time of the year, I love how it's almost like the line separating light and dark on these satellite pictures almost looks like it's pivoting, so to speak, and
Yeah,
almost like a pivoting seesaw.
and
But
very short the daylight because it goes very quickly from that sunrise, and then you see the sunrise sweep that comes across, and then the sunset sweep that comes across.
right, it's hard to believe that sun right now is setting at right around 4:30, and sunrise is late. Is getting later again after we've gone back to standard time, but. Yeah, the days they are getting shorter.
Some lake effect going on the radar. You can see these bands moving off Lake Ontario and Lake Erie into western New York and western Pennsylvania. Looks like a few of those snow showers are making it into northeast PA and into the Catskills. Then they start to dry up a bit. Although there's a little patch, Joe, that's just east of you, moving into southwest Connecticut near Danbury and moving southeastward. But all of that stuff's going to calm down during the overnight. Still a bit of a wind out there, a bit on the busy side. And then here in the west, as we take a look at the echoes here, coming into Washington, Oregon, and Northern California with rain and snow in the interior. In Washington, Oregon, and on up into Idaho and the northern Rockies. Doesn't look like a big snow producer because the bulk of the energy here is going up to the north and northwest of the Pacific Northwest, but it'll be enough to put down a few inches in the mountains, and then they'll move on to whatever the next weather system brings their way as we head into the weekend.
Yes, and we've got a nice spell of dry weather, I think, here. I don't think after tonight, I think the next chance for any precip around here won't come until maybe Monday, maybe a couple of widely scattered showers. But till then, it looks like it's going to be high and dry. And again, after we get through the next day or so, a nice moderation in the temperatures as we move into the end of the week and the weekend.
Tonight's cold front, there's a little low developing southeast of Cape Cod. There's a cold front that extends south off the Carolinas and made it all the way down into North Georgia. I'm just looking here, Joe, in North Georgia right now at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Temperatures were in the low 60s and the dew points were in the upper teens.
Oh, wow.
That is bone dry.
It's a nice,
Bone dry.
that's a nice, I'd like to know, what were the dew points? You know, there
No,
must be like,
the dew points were in the mid teens.
oh, the dew points were in the mid-teens.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know what that
That's
works out
I was just going to
humidity
say that's
wise,
a
but
heck
it's
of
got to be.
heck of a dew point, a heck of a dew point depression there, right there.
What's it
Wow.
like? The humidity must be down under 20%, I would think.
Probably, yeah.
Unreal. And the core of the cold air is sitting in central Illinois, made it up to about 40 or so there, low 40s, and it didn't get out of the 30s in most of Michigan and on up into Minnesota. So that's what we have to play with here for the next, 48 hours or so. And of course, you got these northerly isobars coming down from eastern Canada, from James Bay, at temperatures in the teens and 20s in eastern Canada. So that cold air is funneling down, and it is making its way down into the mid-Atlantic states as well. And of course, the coldest air is not going to get all the way down into the southeast, but definitely a chilly night ahead for the folks in the southeast, and a beautiful day probably coming up for tomorrow. We should have a good deal, a fair amount of sunshine for tomorrow, and the wind may start to finally ease tomorrow night. Now, that's when I think we'll see the cold stuff, the coldest temperatures. And here's your storm, by the way, that's moving into southwestern Canada. It's a 964 low actually, it's going in north of Vancouver Island and moving inland. Just want to see up the coast. It's got to be it's got to be snowing up in Juneau, or at least if it's not, it's that depressing 33 and rain.
Yeah, there's nothing
Nothing more
that's
depressing than 33 and rain.
you would call that indifferent weather right there. Or even at 33 with just a little light drizzle. That's, yeah. Um,
Yes, that's disgusting.
uh,
All right, so
uh,
let's well,
Tim Beltman just mentioned on the chat board, ban lifted back northward again. Joe Rayo and Joe Chiaffi, snowing pretty good now and coating the ground a little.
oh, up by Tim.
Yeah, I guess in the Albany area,
Yeah, so
bands
I'll
lifted
just
back
to take a
northward.
look at the radar up there. Yeah, I mean, you must be in that band that's just over I-90 and moving southeast. That's actually not a half bad looking band. It's pretty healthy. That's moving southeastward there. So you are participating in it, Mr. Veltman, which is very good. Still a little bit ways to go here too with respect to what's up there. It'll eventually die off during the overnight, but count the flakes while they're coming down.
That's right. I'm not going to be a repeat, obviously, of December 1st of last year, where they got up to what 22, 23 inches, but it's a cheap thrill nonetheless.
Hey, there's no thrill like a cheap thrill.
Yeah.
All right,
Oh,
let
my daughter Maria via the chat board. My wife says snow showers now in New Paltz, and my daughter is up there,
see
so
they're getting
she's
close, Joe.
she sees the flaky weather up there, but we still haven't gotten anything here.
Uh, Running through the long range here on the upper air on the GFS, and now that I rolled it back a few days ago, and now we're into the present day. And of course, if you look on the bottom down in Central America, you could see the representation of the upper feature that is Iota. moved inland, and then it just kind of falls apart. Meanwhile, we see our trough in the east lifts out. We get the winds to go westerly in the upper atmosphere. Should warm up. The only difference this time around going into this weekend, Joe, unlike with the stretch we had last week, the upper high was sitting over Pennsylvania and Virginia, the center of the upper high. We're not getting that this time around. The high is on the flat side off the Georgia coast. So I don't think that we're going to see temperatures go up in the way that we saw back a week ago. We will warm up, but I don't see how we're going to get. It's going to be it might be a push to get it out of the 60s in my view. And then after that, we have a weak trough that's swinging around for early next week. That'll probably push a weak cold front through. There's another one that goes by to our north, but the overall pattern is just very benign looking in general through all of Thanksgiving week and going into the weekend right after Thanksgiving. And now we're into December 1st. There's some subtle changes in the upper flow um, across Newfoundland and out to the southern shores of Greenland. Looks like some kind of ridging there building up to the northwest. And there's also some troughing that looks like it wants to set up near the longitude of Hawaii, which, if it does, is something that we would need to pay attention to in the long term if that winds up verifying. The one thing I will point out again, as I've done for the last several nights, and while it's doing this, and being that we really have not much else to pay attention to weather-wise, I want to just point out the polar vortex in the stratosphere. Now, this is still, I'm in the learning phase when it comes to this sort of stuff. So in the meantime, when you look at this level of the atmosphere, let me make sure I got the right, and I do. Okay, so when we roll along, of course, you see how the polar vortex here is just wrapped up, folks, like this tight little ball up in the Arctic region and in northern Canada. That's where the cold air is, relatively speaking, and it won't come down because the polar vortex is strong. But again, this is another run, Joe, where we have the vortex a week from today is sitting along the north coast of Siberia, but the GFS is very insistent on from a week from today, it begins to migrate that polar vortex in the stratosphere over toward northern Greenland by the end of the forecast period. So that might, I think that may change. That if that verifies, I think that's going to change the upper pattern for maybe it'd only be temporary at some point in the month of December. The last day on the 384 hour right now is December 3rd, but you got to give some time to the what happens up in the stratosphere to translate down in the surface. Now, one of the things we have to point out, a big asterisk here, folks, is that this could all happen, and if it doesn't translate to the bottom of the atmosphere, if the La Nina and the flow from the Pacific is the dominating feature, it may stay that way regardless of what happens in the stratosphere. So we'll have to wait and see. But if you have to take away, if for those of you looking for some winter weather and for some snow in the Northeast, um, you have this to maybe hang a little bit of hope on, that the polar vortex is going to migrate away from the coast of Siberia and migrate toward Greenland and northeastern Canada. That would put it in a better position to perhaps set up a flow of cold air into the eastern part of the United States. It also, by the way, Joe, it also doesn't look like a wrapped up, tight little ball anymore. When we get to the end of the forecast period, it looks much more spread out, a bit weaker. And that's something that I know the folks that watch for the polar vortex up at this level often talk about, is you want to see the polar vortex in the stratosphere weak in order for cold air to get displaced further south at the surface in North America. But we'll see.
Didn't Larry Cosgrove talk about or allude to this last week, a week ago Monday? And in fact, I think a couple of days
He
ago we
did.
talked about how the polar vortex was not necessarily migrating, but seemed to be stretching or elongating
Right.
uh, in a sort of a northwest southeast configuration.
Well, I'm just kind of following. It looks like the low moves down into initially into northwest Canada, and then it starts moving eastward toward northern Greenland. So migrating, maybe it's doing both. Maybe the low is migrating and elongating. So he did say that if it goes down and goes into northwest Canada, that would not be good. That would make it colder in the west. But perhaps again, this may be just the one thing that you might come away to hang your hat on tonight is perhaps the change in the stratosphere might be leading to something. I don't see any kind of stratospheric warming going on when I look at the anomalies here. It doesn't look all that impressive to me. If you want my never to be humble opinion from that respect, usually you see you get that really bright orange color indicating warm air in the upper atmosphere moving across. But when you look at this map, there's a lot of cold air in the upper atmosphere. There isn't a whole lot of warm air to create a stratospheric warming event, from what I'm gathering.
Well, Adam Lowe on the chat board says yes, but still wrapped and extremely strong. So it'll be a fast paced pattern, but it still ends up over the pole. Models still predict record strength for at least early December.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's got
My
to
God, we're
go.
talking about, I can't believe we're talking about December. It seems like November just started and we're already more than halfway through November. It's
Yes.
crazy. Yeah.
So as far as day-to-day weather is concerned, we don't really have any big storms around. Action up in the northwest, as you can see here, for tomorrow night and Thursday. The rest of the country is quiet. A little bit of shower activity in and around Florida with that easterly flow there. And of course, your high moves out. Looks like a little weak front comes through here on Friday night. And you get this high that builds up north of Plattsburgh over the weekend. And that's one of the other reason, Joe. You got more of a northeast wind here setting up for Saturday and Sunday. So I think that also will probably put a cap on temps overall. And here's your next front for Monday, which looks pretty weak. More action up in the northwestern corner of the country. And then there's another weak system that heads into the east Tuesday night into Wednesday. And then after that, it just looks dry. Go for Thanksgiving and mostly dry for Thanksgiving into Thanksgiving weekend. Little precip there up in northern New England, but the whole country really is just in a snooze fest here in this pattern.
And you know, how many times in the past have so many people gotten on planes, trains, or gotten on their car first thing in the morning on Thanksgiving morning to travel to grandma's house or to a relative's house for the big Thanksgiving afternoon or evening feast?
Right.
And they've had to battle snow or ice or cold or wind. And now this is the year where, of course, all the experts are telling people, forfeit this Thanksgiving because of the COVID-19 situation. Don't travel, don't gather in big. And this will be the one year where it looks like beautiful weather from coast to coast
Right.
with above normal temperatures. You can't win,
No,
can
you
you?
can't. Bill Goodman is, I guess, something must have happened. So he hasn't shown yet, and I'm guessing he probably is delayed and something came up. So my apologies for to everybody. We'll try again. We had those few horrible technical difficulties a week ago when we tried to do this, and now we have attendance difficulties as we try to do this. So
Well, hopefully it won't be three strikes and you're out.
right. All right, so let's do a little Briller Jeopardy, and then we can wrap it up tonight. Because I'm thinking that he's not gonna make it in time. So you got questions for me?
I gave you all the questions I had from last night. I don't think I have anything.
Well, I thought he sent you questions.
He did?
He may have sent you more questions.
Well, let me check. I could be wrong. I usually am. Let's see. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Oh, now here we go with this problem again. It took me like it took me the better part of 20 minutes in order to pull out those questions from last night.
Well, here's a suggestion. Why don't you pull them out earlier in the day so that this way they're here for when the time we come on the air?
I didn't anticipate that he was going to send me. I
Oh,
thought last night I had questions. I figured tonight was your night for questions.
no,
I
he's on a kick to put me in the hot seat.
and actually I didn't even realize that we were going to have questions at all, since I thought we were going to have a guest
Yes,
tonight.
I know. I hear you. All right, you know what? You download the questions so that you have them for tomorrow, and
Right.
we'll go from there. So, uh, God, the world we live in,
It's technology, Joe.
it's technology, Joe. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Oh well. Well, folks, just want to remind everybody that the Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware. Are you getting ready? Because Omni True Value Hardware is getting ready for the winter as the largest provider of rock salt on Long Island. And it's not just rock salt, folks. It's mag ice melting pellets and flakes, Petalo Premium Snow and Ice Melter, Biomelt, Geomelt, and everything you need to clean up if and when these winter storms arrive. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue, West Babylon, New York, 631-756-1125, or go to the website omnitruevalue.com. So I guess it's time to say goodnight, Gracie.
Well, thank you very much. Good night, Gracie.
Oh God. Yep. All right, folks. Sorry about the what happened tonight. We'll try again. Maybe we'll try again tomorrow night. I just have
Yes.
to I have to go back now on YouTube and take down the opening graphic, which says that Bill's going to be here. He will have been the longest promoted person that we've ever had.
Uh,
People are going to start to think that this guy doesn't really exist.
well, he did make a cameo appearance before things broke down last week, if you
Right.
remember.
No, he does exist, folks. Trust us,
Yes.
okay? He's been
Yes.
on the show before, and he'll
Yes.
be on again. Just not tonight, apparently. All right, Joe. Good night. Good night, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Nighty night.